Alright, so MX Bikes is a sick motocross simulator, right? You got your whips, your crashes, and your sketchy online lobbies. But what if I told you that there's a lot more to this game than meets the eye? From cursed tracks to game-breaking physics, today we're doing a deep dive into MX Bikes. More specifically, the Mx Bikes Iceberg, where things start off pretty normal, but by the end, you might regret ever downloading this game. Let's get into it. Starting off at the tip of the iceberg in Tier 1, we have MX Bikes itself. Most of you probably already know what MX Bikes is, but if you don't, MX Bikes is a motocross simulator where you can race people online, play by yourself in testing, customize your bike and rider, and make bike setups. Watch the rest of this video if you want to learn more. The next entry on the iceberg refers to the steep learning curve that MX Bikes has. MX Bikes is one of the hardest games that myself and many others have ever learned how to play. At the start, you will crash many times, and once you're able to do laps without crashing and think you're finally getting good, you realize how bad you actually are. But that is why we play the game, because it's hard. How long it takes to get good depends on what games you played before this one. For example, someone who played a game like MX Simulator before MX Bikes would have an easier time learning the game compared to someone who played a game like MX vs ATV, since the physics are so different. Don't let this discourage you though, because some of the most fun times I've ever had playing this game came from when I was learning it. So if you're thinking about getting MX Bikes and are worried that it's going to take you too long to learn, I would tell you to just go for it. Stock tracks. This entry refers to the stock tracks that come with the base game, and there are 17 of them in total. While most of them are pretty boring and outdated, there are certainly a few that have become iconic in the MX Bikes community. However, none are as popular as Forest Raceway, arguably the most popular track of all time in MX Bikes. The community has always pushed to get the fastest lap time around this track, with the fastest lap time that I could find on YouTube held by Spocket with a 56.8 lap time. It is likely that this lap will never be beaten again, as the bikes we have now are much slower compared to when this record was set, but we will talk more about unbeatable lap records later. MX Bikes Shop / MXB Mods. I decided to combine both of these entries as they are pretty much the same thing. The MX Bikes Shop is where you can find the highest quality paid tracks and bike models. When the MX Bikes Shop initially rolled out, there was a bit of backlash from the community, as people were used to getting all mods for free. But after 2 years, it's clear that the MX Bike Shop is here to stay. MXB Mods is the exact same as the shop, except it's where all the free mods are. You will find more bike skins and rider gears in MXB Mods, and there are also thousands of free tracks that can all be accessed in this website. So basically anything that you need for MX Bikes, MXB Mods or the shop is the place to go. Aerial Racing League. The Aerial Racing League, or just Aerial for short, is the biggest and most competitive racing league in MX Bikes. The cool thing about Aerial is that it replicates the real-life AMA races. They use the same format as real life, where all the riders will qualify, do heat races and LCQs, and then main events. The tracks are also replicated from the real-life ones, which is what attracts all the pros. For Supercross, the track comes out one day before the race in real life, and the track creators will go off the AMA track maps to recreate the track. And for Outdoors, the tracks come out 1 week after the race, so that the track creators can accurately replicate how the track broke down on race day. So starting off on level 2, we have model swaps. Model swaps are mods that you download and put on a bike to make it look different, not to be confused with bike skins. Bike skins go on top of model swaps. Model swaps can change just as little as a different exhaust pipe or adding handguards, or they could be a whole different bike completely. No matter what model you put on a bike though, it doesn't actually change how the bike handles and is purely cosmetic. As you can see here, this is the Husqvarna 250 with no model on it. Now this is the same Husqvarna with the model swap on it. As you can see, it looks like a Honda, but it is still the same Husqvarna 250 underneath. Beta 18 Austrian bike meta. The Beta 18 Austrian bike meta refers to a time where all the Austrian bikes, the KTM, Husky, and Gas, were way better than all the other options. They were so much better that it was to the point that if you weren't on one, you were basically trolling. This was due to them having slightly more horsepower than the other bikes, as well as having the option of using a quick shifter. If you go back and watch any pro race from the Beta 18 era, it will be just a sea of orange. The community didn't like this, so the next bike update was focused on balancing all the bikes, and there is now much more color on the gate. Max HUD. Max HUD is an essential plugin for the game that allows you to do many things that help with racing, such as enabling the track map, standings, live timing, fuel level, and much more stuff. All of these things should be in the base game, but of course they aren't. Beta 19 Beta 450. The Beta 19 Beta 450 will go down as one of the most overpowered and broken bikes in MX Bikes history. But when it first came out, people didn't realize right away just how overpowered it really was. It wasn't until round 5 of Supercross when Brado posted this hot lap video where he uses the beta's acceleration to help him wheelie and front flip a Supercross triple to stay lower and save time. This led to the beta being banned in aerial for being too unrealistic, and the OEM guys even admitted that the bike was indeed broken and was never intended to be this good. Pretty interesting piece of MX Bikes history. Farm 14. Farm 14 is one of the most popular modded tracks in the game, loved for its big booters and good visuals for its time. It's been around for such a long time that you could check the game files of every player in MX Bikes, and at least 95% of them will have this track. Players in the community seem to either love or hate the track, and many people that love the track are called Farm 14 warriors, because at some point, they should get off the track. MXB Ranked. MXB Ranked is the official MX Bikes ranking system. There are many different servers to choose from, with some only being on Supercross tracks, some only motocross, and some for only high-ranked players. The ranks are similar to other games in how you start in bronze, work your way up through silver and gold, and eventually you can get to the highest known rank in the game, which is Obsidian. There's also different MMR rankings for motocross and Supercross, so some people like myself might be really high ranked in Supercross, but very low in motocross. You can also view the top 100 lap times for basically any track and see where you stack up. Ranked lobbies are notorious for having lots of interesting riders, but really, it's no different than any public lobby. Bike life. This entry is referring to the wheelie boys of MX Bikes. These guys make up a surprising amount of players in the community, and many of them only play the game for the wheelies. To be fair, wheelies are actually really fun, and the physics just work well in the game. So it's unsurprising that such a large chunk of the community are just bike lifers. E-Road. E-Road refers to the in-game terrain deformation system. Sometimes it works okay, other times it turns the track into the Grand Canyon, and this has inspired many creators to make videos involving some kind of E-Road challenge. The E-Road has been a work in progress area in the game for a long time, and it was even worse in the past. Although it still creates jagged squared off ruts and front flip kickers on jump faces, it is the best it's ever been in the game. Weather system. Yes, MX Bikes does have a weather system. No, most people don't use it, but it does work pretty good. You can select the sky, the temperature, and the wind. I'm not sure if the temperature or wind actually changes how anything feels, but the rain does in fact give you less traction. As you can see, this is what Washington looks like with weather set to clear, and this is when it's set to rainy. As you can see, there is significantly less traction, and you even get little raindrops on your goggles. Level 3. Data mismatch. This entry is referring to something that happens in the game when you try and play online with outdated bikes. For example, let's say you hadn't noticed that the new bikes came out, and you go to try and play online, the game will give you an error that says bike mismatch. All it means is that you need to download the newest bikes, and it will be fixed. Reshade. Reshade is a plugin that adds shaders to MX Bikes. You can download different presets off MXB mods and put them in your game, or you can create your own custom preset. Many of you probably already know about Reshade, as it is used in many other games for the same thing. Quick Shift. As mentioned previously in the Beta 18 Austrian bike meta entry, the KTM, Husqvarna, and Triumph all have something called a Quick Shifter. Quick Shift allows you to shift gears without ever needing to let off the gas, which helps in a few areas. One way it helps is just by eliminating the time lost by letting off the gas while shifting, which may not sound like a big deal, but over the course of a lap, that time adds up. Another way it helps is in the whoops, as it allows riders to quickly shift all the way up to 5th gear, which gives you more speed through the whoops. You can enable Quick Shift by going into the game settings and turning Shift Help off. Again, this only works on the KTM, Husky, and Triumph. GUID. GUID is a unique string of characters that are assigned to you when you buy MX Bikes. Your GUID is then used if you ever sign up for pro races or on MX Bikes shop to make sure that only your GUID has access to the things you buy. Netcode. Perhaps MX Bikes' biggest issue, the netcode. Netcode is how you see other riders online and how they see you. A game with good netcode would allow people to see exactly where other people are and be able to make contact with them without sending them across the map. MX Bikes is not like this. There have been countless times where someone takes someone out and the other person complains, only to see that on their screen they were nowhere near touching you. This can be extremely frustrating, and this problem alone has ruined more races than any other bug in the game. Elimination races. Elimination races are a type of race where you start with a full gate of riders and do a 1-lap race. At the end of the race, admins will eliminate 1 to 3 riders at a time until there is only 3 people left. Then it will usually be a best of 3 race between the final riders. This type of racing is extremely fun, but also has a lot of luck involved, because if you get a bad start and get last in just one race, you're out. Hill physics / slow physics. This entry refers to the generally wonky physics that Mx Bikes has. The physics are especially bad when going up steep hills or when you're going slow. This has limited track creators for years, as the bikes just can't make it up some hills or steep jump faces. With the most recent bikes, it has gotten much better, but sometimes it's just inevitable. Sit to scrub. This entry refers to an advanced scrubbing technique in the game that takes advantage of an interesting game mechanic. It's a bit hard to see, but when you sit down in this game, instead of the rider going down to the seat actually rises up to the rider, which also raises the rear wheel. Early in Mx Bikes history, riders started realizing that if you time the sit just right, your rider can perfectly soak up the jump and stay way lower. Nowadays, it would be hard to find a player that doesn't use this technique. And you don't actually need to whip the bike sideways to do this. The same thing can be achieved by simply leaning forwards at the top of the lip and timing the sit. Suspension setups. Mx Bikes has a very realistic suspension system that allows riders to tune their suspension just as they would in real life. You can make it easier to ride for beginners, or make it super stiff for pros to race on. There are even entire Discord servers dedicated to setups for Mx Bikes, and they can actually make a big difference in how your bike feels. Track scaling. This entry refers to how different tracks are scaled differently depending on how difficult the track creator wants their track to be. In general, tracks are scaled up from real life, since the bikes in Mx Bikes are probably faster than they are in real life. Not to mention the lack of fear of crashing, which allows players to absolutely send it everywhere. It might sound counterintuitive, but smaller scaled tracks are usually more difficult than a larger scaled track, because it requires more precision to hit each obstacle correctly. But when you hear someone mention track scaling, all that they're talking about is just the size of the jumps. Sound mods. This one is pretty self-explanatory. Sound mods are mods that you can download to make your bike sound different. You could even make your 450 sound like a 125 two-stroke if you wanted to. Level 4. MAC Leerop. This entry refers to a legendary sand track that was created by GeoPanda in 2021. This track is very challenging yet very rewarding for its time, and I believe it is one of the best tracks to ride if you want to improve at the game. Other than that, I'm not entirely sure why this made the Iceberg, to be honest, other than the fact that it's just a legendary track. Run out of gas plus fuel has weight. Yes, you actually can run out of gas in Mx Bikes. The game is trying to be a simulator after all. And while you might not notice too big of a difference, the more fuel that you put in your bike, the heavier it gets. This is why you will see pros lower the fuel down to 1 liter while qualifying for races. It's so that the bike is as light as it can be to possibly save a few tenths. Track markers. This one is also quite self-explanatory, but a lot of people still don't know about its existence. In testing, you can set markers anywhere on a track so that you can press a button to teleport back to that spot. This can be done by first going into your settings and seeing what button is binded to track marker. Then in-game, all you need to do is hold down that button until it says track marker placed at the bottom of your screen. Then you can press that same button to respawn at that place. 435 horsepower RMzilla. This is probably the fastest modded bike in all of Mx Bikes. With 435 horsepower, it's almost impossible to ride this thing like a normal bike. If you even slightly press the gas while not moving, you will be sent into a million backflips. This bike has been used in many TikToks of Mx Bikes where they either jump across the entire map or do like 7 backflips in one jump. JV. I tried to avoid putting specific people on the Iceberg, but I just couldn't leave out someone like JV. JV is the GOAT of track creating in MX Bikes, and the man is way overqualified for MX Bikes tracks. He has even done work on very popular movies such as Star Wars, and that pretty much explains why he is the GOAT. Go on any JV track and you will be met with the best graphics that could ever be seen in MX Bikes, as well as very realistic and challenging height maps. Last year, JV made the MXGP and AMA outdoor tracks, and they are the best this game has ever seen. Bikes inside each other. This entry is referring to a glitch that has came up somewhat recently in MX Bikes history. This glitch seems to occur when someone online leaves the server, then rejoins the same server on a different bike. For whatever reason, this causes a visual bug where two riders will appear to be inside each other, but still riding around just fine. Either this will happen, or you will get a visual bug as you can see where there is a kind of flashing on your screen. Direct lean. Direct lean is a very misunderstood setting in MX Bikes. All that direct lean does is controls how fast the rider brings himself back up to an upright position after letting go of the stick. The higher the percentage, the faster he returns to the upright position. Krakenberg. This entry is referring to another legendary track created by Resolute Kraken. Perhaps the biggest map in all of MX Bikes. Krakenberg is a loose replica of the track seen in Red Bull Hare Scramble, where there are steep hill climbs, log jumps, and rock gardens. Many people have set out on this track to try and complete a lap, but only a few have made it the entire way around. With the lap times being around 1 hour, and the high potential of your game crashing when you hit a rock, it's no surprise that Krakenberg is so hard to complete a lap around. Skills. Like I said before, I wanted to avoid mentioning specific people on the iceberg, but it's hard to talk about MX Bikes racing without ever talking about Skills. Skills is the fastest rider to ever touch MX Bikes, and the game has never seen a level of dominance close to what Skills had at his peak. This man was even wheeling entire whoop sections on the wonky Beta 18 bikes, and he would constantly be hitting lines that most people didn't even see. Skills has been around for a while now, and he is still one of the best players in the world. Level 5. Trial. Trial is basically the bike life map for MX Bikes. The map consists of a huge parking lot with many roads winding around the map. There are even a few jumps you can find dotted around the map. Basically, if you want to do wheelies, this is the map for it. Shift plus C. This entry is referring to a way you can adjust your camera more than just in the settings. In game, if you press Shift and C at the same time, it will allow you to use the arrow keys to move your rider forwards or backwards. Then if you press Shift C again, it will let you move the rider up and down. I prefer to move my rider all the way back and all the way down, but it's all just personal preference. Old setups. This entry refers to the new anti-cheat system that Poboso recently implemented. Basically, if you try to join a server and you have a bike setup from a previous update, the game will think you are cheating and you will be temporarily banned from that server. The only way to fix this is to either go in testing and delete all your old setups, or go into the game files and delete them that way. EICMA LAN event. The EICMA LAN event is the first ever in-person LAN event that MX Bikes has ever had. This was a very cool time to be an MX Bikes player, as the game was peaking in popularity and the EICMA LAN event only made things more exciting. Players were just happy to see their favorite game being shown off as such a large event. EICMA itself is a moto event that has been going on for many years in Italy, but only 1 year they had MX Bikes. For the race, there would be 3 qualifying races weeks in advance, and the top 10 qualifiers were flown out and given a hotel, all just to play MX Bikes. Since they had to be flown out and there were prizes involved, this did limit the qualifiers to only people that were 18 years of age. Cam would end up being the winner of the LAN event, which solidified his name as the best in the world for that year. The following year, players were excited to go back and do the EICMA LAN event for the 2nd year in a row. But unfortunately, the management had changed at EICMA, and the new owners just didn't see a value in bringing MX Bikes back, so there may never be another LAN event ever again. Unbeatable lap records. This entry refers to some lap records that will never be beaten again. This is because as MX Bikes changes and pushes to become more realistic, the bikes tend to slow down after a few updates, with the most noticeable difference being between the Beta 18 and Beta 19 bikes. The Beta 18 bikes weren't necessarily faster in a straight line than the Beta 19s, but they had infinitely more traction. This allowed riders to carry way more speed around corners, which led to some insane hot laps. And unless the next update brings that traction back, these laps will never be beaten again. Supermoto tires. This entry is referring to a time in the game where if you played on the supermoto bikes and rode a dirt track, for whatever reason, you would have way more traction than the dirt tires did at the time. This allowed people like Linz to go and break multiple world records, just because the traction was so OP. This did not seem to be intentional, as the tires were fixed in the next update. The perfect lean angle. This is a more hypothetical entry. The perfect lean angle is unknown, but it's something that pros in MX bikes have been perfecting since the game came out. If you think about it, there must be a perfect turning angle where it's just before the bike loses traction, but just enough that you can turn very tightly. If you can figure this out, maybe you'll be the next GOAT. Track lists. This entry is referring to the way that tracks are stored in MX bikes. By default, there are 4 different folders in the mod tracks folder, but many people don't know that you can add your own folders to this and create your own method of sorting tracks. PPD. This entry refers to one of the first of its kind ranking systems in MX bikes. Very similar to MXB Ranked, PPD had an MMR system and lap records on its website. PPD was pretty unique for its time, and it kept many players, myself included, playing the game with something to go after. PPD has since shut down, as the creators said they lost motivation for the project. Level 6. Beta 17 traction plus whip physics. This entry refers to the Beta 17 update in MX Bikes, which has many similarities to the Beta 19 update. The Beta 17 update brought new traction changes that the majority of players did not like. The bikes had even less traction than they do now, and this caused many people to full-on quit playing the game. One thing that was good about this update, however, was the whip physics, as many consider it to be the best whip physics the game has ever had. Unfortunately, with the Beta 18 update, to fix some of the other problems with the bikes, the whip physics had to be dumbed down a lot, and a lot of the whips are just not possible anymore. Game save broken. Game save broken refers to a glitch in the game where randomly, the game will basically choose a state that it gets stuck in. And when you try to change something like your bike setup or game settings, and you close the game, when you reopen the game, all your settings will revert back to the original state. This glitch has no known fix, and personally, when I had this glitch, I had to basically get a whole new computer to fix it. Texture size glitch. The texture size glitch is a glitch where if you didn't have your texture sizes set to high in the game settings, your game would freeze every time someone left or joined your server. This proved to be a pretty big issue for qualifying, as just when you would be on a hot lap, someone would leave and freeze your game. It is unclear what causes this glitch to happen, and this glitch is still in the game today. Tire hacks. This entry is referring to modded tires in MX bikes. These tires would usually be modified to have more traction than the OEM tires, giving you a huge advantage. This used to be a big issue in MX bikes past, but with the new anti-cheat system, it's almost impossible to use tire hacks. Ghost Rider bug. The Ghost Rider bug is a visual bug in the game where bikes will be riding around with no player on them. This usually happens when someone joins a server after you, and your game hasn't fully loaded them in yet. To fix this, you just need to return to pit. Cursed tracks. Cursed tracks are tracks that people put on MX bikes with fake download links that are actually viruses. This has happened many times in the past, with many people losing their computers to these dumb viruses. This seems to be less popular nowadays, but you still have to be careful with what you download online. 110 max FOV. This entry refers to a time in MX Bikes history where the max FOV you could select was only 110, compared to the 130 today. The only way to make your FOV higher than 110 was to go into the game files and change it there, which was pretty easy to do. Level 7. Linda launching. Linda launching is a start technique that was discovered by Linz, which is why it's called Linda launching. He found that if you do a burnout into the start gate, you will not get stuck in it, and actually you get a perfect jump which allows you to get amazing starts. This was quickly banned in Aerial, but not because it was overpowered. It was banned because they didn't want Roost to be flying all over the start because it looks unrealistic. Beta 16 Kawasaki 250. Perhaps the best bike of all time in MX bikes. The Beta 16 Kawasaki 250. This bike had a dominance over the field similar to how the Austrians do now. Basically everyone rode this bike, with only a few riding the Honda, and all the world records at the time were all set on the Kawasaki 250. Some people that kept their old files still go back to Beta 16 just to experience riding this bike again. Tracks that change over time. This entry refers to how some people believe that certain tracks actually change over time. They say that it happens by so many people creating E-road on the track that when you reset the track, it is slightly different where that E-road was. I haven't found any evidence of this to be true, but still an interesting entry. Phantom Online Riders. Phantom Online Riders is an interesting phenomenon in MX Bikes. Some players have reported seeing bikes riding around in online servers with no player actually controlling it, with some people reporting that they were in a server all by themselves and they still saw other riders riding around. I have never experienced this myself, and I hope that I never do, as this is pretty creepy. Front fenders. This entry refers to a kind of psychological effect that front fenders have on gameplay. Basically, how your fender looks can subconsciously have an effect on how you ride the bike, kind of like the placebo effect. This is why many people ride the bike that they think looks the best, because they actually ride better on it. And this is not just with MX Bikes. With any moto game, how your front fender looks really can affect how you ride. Level 8. Lean Help 0. This entry refers to a bit of a secret setting that MX Bikes has. In the normal game settings, there is a setting called Lean Help, and you can tick it on and off. But what most people don't know is that when you have Lean Help set to off, it is actually still there, just not as strong. If you go into the game files, you can fully disable Lean Help, which might sound like a negative at first, but Lean Help 0 might be one of the most overpowered settings in the game. With Lean Help 0, your bike will turn exactly 1-to-1 with how you move your stick, and this is very hard to learn at first. However, once you do learn it, it raises the skill ceiling so much higher than with Lean Help 1. Once you do learn it, the crazy scrubs you can pull off are insane. And remember the weird slow physics that I mentioned before? This setting almost gets rid of them completely. This setting was allowed in Pro Play up until last year, and it is now banned forever. Beta 15 TM450. The Beta 15 TM450 is a forgotten bike in MX Bikes history. Apparently, the TM in this beta was broken, similar to how the Beta 450 and Beta 19 is, and how it was so much faster than all the other bikes. This led to it being banned in Aerial, and I believe this is the first case of a bike ever being banned. Poboso Interview. This entry refers to a rumor that the creator of the game was gonna do an interview with some news outlet, but this interview was never released. Some people believe that they did indeed record the interview, but it was scrapped as Poboso decided he didn't want his face to be shown online. Or some people believe that this interview never happened, and it's all just a rumor. Secret track. Some people believe that somewhere in the game files, there is a hidden, unfinished track that was never released. This has never been fully proven, and it is likely that Poboso will never confirm or deny this. The private beta. This entry refers to a rumor that a select group of players have access to a private beta which has so-called perfect physics, but it was never released to the public. This is very unlikely to be true, as I feel like Poboso is incapable of making these perfect physics, and if he could, why not just release them to the public? Although this seems unlikely, it would be pretty crazy if it were found to be true. Well boys, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is by far the longest time I've ever spent making a video, so I would really appreciate it if you guys could leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Also, let me know in the comments if there's anything that you know that I missed that you think should be included in a part 2, if I ever were to do one. But that won't be for a while because these videos take way too long to make. If you're watching this and you don't have MX Bikes and you're thinking about buying it, don't let all the bad things on this list push you away from getting it, because MX Bikes is still one of the best motocross games that I think exists right now. And sure, it might have its quirks, but they're all very minor, and this game is overall very good. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys next time.